Should I just start? Okay, so let's see. Are my slides visible? Though I can't see the chat anymore, so I will assume. Okay, so the internet. Just sort of a quick background on me. Where I fit into the internet is because of random events. I wound up working in designing of computer networks at the very beginning, which was the late 1970s. And my job was to design how you could hook computers together in any configuration and have them without any configuration, and they would be able to cooperate and create forwarding tables. And what's a forwarding? Well, you plug the network together, and a forwarding table is a table at a router or switch that when it receives a packet, it's in an envelope and it says which destination it's supposed to go to. And the switch can look at its table here and it says for each destination which port to send it out. So before me, I wasn't the first person to do this. There was the ARPANET, which was kind of a very researchy thing. And the assumption was that the same people who designed the algorithms would also write the code and manage the network all from one location. But when I was working at Digital Equipment Corporation, where we were designing networks that actual people would manage and use. And I had actually met real people, unlike a lot of engineers, and I actually am a real human. So some of my contributions to routing, the ARPANET was a very, very fragile algorithm where just a few bad messages, the network would be down forever. So imagine if that happened on the internet today. So that was one of my first contributions, was saying that networks had to be a lot more stable than that, and how to do it, and making it need a lot less configuration, and also various improvements to make it capable of supporting much larger networks. So now let's talk about the internet. Can we live without it? Think of how it has changed society. A merchant can reach a worldwide customer base without even having a storefront. You can buy things. You can look for some sort of obscure thing, and you can find them and purchase from a vendor you never heard of, from a country you've never heard of. All information can be looked up online. So Wikipedia, I find, is totally miraculous. The idea that anybody can edit information, it should just be full of, you know, nastiness and political stuff and whatever, but somehow it seems to be, for the most part, well-written, concise articles. So I'm just amazed. News happens instantly without needing to have like a major TV news crew there. Anybody with a cell phone is now a reporter, and you know, within seconds, their information of what's actually happening can virally explode through the internet. Social media lets you easily keep up with all your friends and families. They can give the long story about whatever, post it once and everybody can read it. It also allows you to find a group of people who are interested in the same obscure hobby you have, like breeding hamsters. And there's a huge library of movies and music that you can watch whatever you want, when you want it. And also, if you're on vacation, you can watch security video of what's going on in your house from wherever you are. So all these things are wonderful. But, oh, and also post-COVID, online meetings are almost as good as in person, which was kind of an amazing thing to discover. So we don't need to travel to the office. It saves commute times. It saves travel costs, and it's good for the environment. But physical stores are being put out of business. newspapers and physical book publishers are struggling, and a lot of local newspapers are going out of business, which is, you know, they just can't afford it. Privacy is lost, even if you're not the one that personally posts, just because you're in pictures and people tag you or talk about having met you or whatever you buy. Somebody is keeping track of what your browser history is and what videos you've watched, and there's a big database of that, and that's worth a lot of money to whoever has collected it. It's not worth a lot of money to you, but yeah, privacy is really lost these days. And telephones, I remember a day when telephones used to work, and that was because the telephone company took it very seriously. The internet people sort of made fun of the telephone network because they made their switches so expensive. But on the other hand, they were very reliable. Then people discovered that having everything work on the internet instead of having a separate telephone network made things a lot cheaper. And that's true, but telephone calls, you know, are no longer as reliable as they used to be. But on the other hand, in order to talk on the telephone, you had to actually be in your house. We didn't have cell phones. Yeah. And these days also, because of the internet, which is cheaper for businesses, rather than having a call center with humans, businesses make it almost impossible to do things over the phone. So if you try to purchase an airplane ticket over the phone, you have to first listen to a long voicemail message telling you, wouldn't you rather go to the website? And by the way, if you try to purchase an airplane ticket, we're going to charge you an extra $25. Also, the internet is an addiction. People, I worry about the younger generation that they really don't know how to function if they're not constantly entertained. So now that's how the internet has really changed how we operate. But now the question is, can we survive with the internet? So it is destroying civilization. It's easy for anybody to inject news. Yes, that's good, but you can also inject false things. And also on top of that, with the deep fake kinds of things where you can do something in somebody's voice or just, you know, create false videos. It's very hard to know when you see something, whether it's true or false, especially if you don't even have to do videos. You just create like a news story in text, and these things get believed by a lot of people. There used to be just a few sources of news. There was a handful of major TV networks or a few major newspapers, and in general, professional journalists do care about truth. So for the most part, these things were true, and if ever they did something that was false, it would be found out, and then they would do a retraction. But these days, of course, people are just injecting all sorts of inflammatory, completely false things. Though there are, of course, some countries that have extreme censorship. So having no information other than like state-sponsored TV can also be dangerous. But yeah, today stories are completely unfiltered and can be spread virally through social media. So anyone can say anything. And it was always possible to spread lies, but the internet just makes it exponentially more efficient. AI machine language programs, their goal is to keep you reading and watching. So they kind of learn what types of stories you like, and they give you more of that type. And then they give you more and more extreme content. So if you're just sort of interested in something, eventually they'll be giving you things that can completely radicalize you and have you read more and more extreme things. And they'll never expose you to any alternate point of view. Once they kind of figure out what you like, you just get more and more of that. And that's extremely dangerous. It's polarizing society. It's making people, believe things that are absolutely not true, and hate the other side. So truth. You can find anything on the internet. So your kid swallows some rat poison. So you frantically search on the internet antidote for rat poison, and you can find something. But the question is it true? There's, anyone can post things and get found. So how do you know if it's true? Now, there are fact-checking organizations. So if you're on Facebook and somebody sends you some article about, some radical thing, it's possible that responsible people will go to Snopes or some other fact-checking organization. But I'm not so worried about me getting fooled by these things. I will be responsible enough to check on it before I forward it further, but a lot of people won't. And a lot of people will be very annoyed by fact-checking organization because they want to believe what they want to believe. But so if whatever platform they're using starts refusing to let them forward things that the platform thinks is false, these people will just find an equivalent platform that doesn't do that, or they'll find a platform that censors anything, any information that scientists or whatever would inject because they don't want to believe scientists. Now, even something as kind of easy as customer reviews on a major site where you buy things, how do you know that these customer reviews are from real unbiased customers? I was recently looking for thermometers, and I noticed there were lots and lots of merchants on Amazon selling thermometers. But then I would, trying to look for ones that had high ratings, I noticed that a lot of them had a bunch of 5-star ratings, all posted on the same day about a week before. And that was, I realized, was probably a fake merchant that just quickly established a presence on the platform and then gave themselves a bunch of 5-star reviews, and they probably would disappear before, once a lot of people ordered the things, they would then disappear before they ever actually shipped any. Now, security in general. In the beginning, when people were designing networks, they worried about things like unauthorized disclosure of information, unauthorized modification of information, and theft of services. And they did, these early papers said, yeah, there's this other issue called denial of service, but we don't have to worry about it because nobody would bother doing it because it doesn't benefit the attacker in any way. But of course, that we've discovered that that is not true. So there's a lot of reasons to do denial of service and make the internet or a particular site on the internet unreachable. So there's terrorism, like you could disable the electric grid, or you might want to harass somebody or harass a competitive merchant, or there's actually ways of making money at it. So people on the dark web infect a whole bunch of machines and then they rent time. And they say, if you want to rent my bot army, I have this many, and it will cost you this amount of money per hour if you want me to tell all of my bots, which are infected machines, to go attack somebody. So security theory versus practice. theory of security with all the crypto and the whatever is just so beautiful and so perfect. So if you want to talk to somebody, you type the DNS name and your machine goes and looks up the IP address and sends something to that DNS name saying, I would like to talk to you. And that site sends you a certificate showing what its public key is, signed by somebody your browser trusts. And then there's wonderful cryptography and wonderfully crafted protocols where the server proves that it knows that DNS name, and everything is just really great. But in reality, users don't start out knowing the DNS name. Usually you do a search and you get an obscure URL string like that. So what is the URL in there? What is the DNS name in there? And furthermore, even if the user finds the DNS name in the URL, I actually fell for a scam recently. And it wasn't where somebody sent me email saying they were a Nigerian prince and wanted to give me money. This was something that I was completely innocent, and I'm reasonably knowledgeable about what's going on the internet, but it was a really instructive way to fool me. So I wanted to renew my driver's license. So I typed into the search engine, renew Washington State driver's license. And the top search result looked legitimate. I was tired, I was busy. And so I got this and I clicked on it. And I didn't notice the thing that said add, but even as such, the DNS name, WashingtonInformation.org driver's license renewal, looks perfectly reasonable. And everything was as I expected. After I clicked on it, it was sort of very well organized, and I could get a new license, I could replace my license, I could change my address. So I clicked on renew driver's license, and it asked me all the things I expected it to ask, like what's my license number, what's my address, what's my credit card. And then afterwards, it said, you are now qualified for a bunch of offers. And that made me a little bit suspicious because I didn't think the real DMV would actually would do that. And then looking more carefully at the site, it didn't actually say it would get me a license. It just said it would give me information on how to get a license. And furthermore, one of the free offers that I was qualified for was a free ebook that I could download that would tell me how to get a license, which if they were at all honest, would actually point me at the real site that I should have gone to rather than their site. So I knew they were a scam, and I called up my bank and they said that there was a pending charge of $3.99, but they can't do anything about it until it posted, so I should call back in a few days. And I figured for $3.99, that actually was well worth it for this incredibly good story that actually illustrates a real security problem that us researchers never really thought about when we're designing crypto and protocols. So initially they charged me $3.99, and then each day they would charge more. So the next day it was $9.99, the next day it was $19.99. So before I called the bank back, they called me, the fraud department, and they said, are these charges fraudulent? And I said, yes, and I explained what had happened. So they disallowed those charges, and they changed my credit card number. So there was no problem for me. But this scam is so lucrative that multiple organizations are doing it in all 50 states. So there are these URLs that all look perfectly reasonable. These are all things that I found: WashingtonDriversLicense.org, WashingtonInformation.org, DMV.org. And the site I should have gone to was Department of Licensing, dol.washington.gov. But how was I, a human, supposed to know that? So it's common to have to trade off usability versus security. You would expect some sort of graph like this, that the more usable it is, the less secure, and the more secure it is, the less usable. But somehow the industry has managed to find this point, which is minimally usable and minimally secure. So every site has different rules for usernames and passwords. It has to be at least N characters, no more than X characters. It must have an uppercase letter and one special character, or it must not contain anything but letters and numbers. So I saw this on the internet once. I thought it was cute. Sorry, but your password must contain an uppercase letter, a number, a haiku, a gang sign, a hieroglyph, and the blood of a virgin. And to make it worse, if you can't remember your password, they won't tell you the password rules until the user gives up and has their account locked and has to go through a much more arduous procedure. And then after the site has authenticated you and believes that it's you and is allowing you to reset your password, they won't allow you to use your previous password. And your previous password would have been perfectly secure, according to them, if you had remembered it. So why do they force you not to reuse it? To punish you for having forgotten it? Anyway, security questions. Who comes up with these? These are a list that I actually stumbled across once. Your father's middle name. Nope, my father didn't have a middle name. Second grade teacher's name. I couldn't remember my second grade teacher's name when I was in second grade. Veterinarian's name. I don't have a pet. Favorite sports team. What's a sport? And my middle name. Well, luckily I do have a middle name. It's Joy. So I typed it in, J-O-Y, and it said, not enough letters. Anyway, there's all these annoying rules that add nothing to security, like that you have to change your password at least every N days, or you can't reset it to a previous one. And these sorts of rules actually lower security. I had a friend in IT and I said, why do you do these things? Don't you realize it lowers security? Do you enjoy torturing users? And he said, oh yes, of course. We love that. That's the best part of our job. But that's not why we do it. It's because there are best practices documents. So companies really have to follow the best practices, because if you get broken into and you say, we followed the best practice document, then you're more protected legally than if you said, well, we only followed the rules in the document that made sense. So I don't want to hear we need better user training or things like people shouldn't click on suspicious links. What's a link? What's a suspicious link? So the problem is not the users. The problem is we need to design things so that actual humans can use them. So in summary, the internet has changed the world. We can no longer survive without it, but I'm not sure we can just survive with it either. It's destroying civilization. But that's good news for you guys, you're students. If everything were perfect, there wouldn't be anything for you to do. So you should be pleased that the world is in such a mess because it gives you problems to solve. So this is actually a quote that when I was writing my security book, I wrote this and I think it just captures things perfectly. Humans are incapable of securely storing high quality cryptographic keys, and they have unacceptable speed and accuracy when performing cryptographic operations. They're also large, expensive to maintain, difficult to manage, and they pollute the environment. It is astonishing that these devices continue to be manufactured and deployed, but they are sufficiently pervasive that we must design our systems around their limitations. So that's it, and hopefully there's some time for Q&A. So hopefully I am no longer sharing. Okay, so I think that what popped up here is is a question. So yeah, did I suffer any kind of prejudice? Presumably because I was female, maybe, in in computing. And yeah, oh, and now you said, yeah, gender issue. So indeed, if you look for prejudice, you'll find it. And what I find is most difficult is dealing with bullies. And it isn't necessarily a gender thing, but there's certain people that are just relentlessly self-promoting, and they steal ideas and they belittle other people. That makes it really difficult for everybody. So when people ask me, how can you design a corporate culture that will make it more welcoming for women or minorities? I say, well, that's not exactly the right question. It's how do you make a good corporate culture so that everybody can thrive? So indeed, of course, I've had people not take me seriously, no matter what I did that might have changed the industry. And it was really just because I happened to have written the book Interconnections, which became the book that everybody learned about layers 2 and 3 from, that I didn't have to, oh, and it isn't just my gender, it's that I really don't act all important. So some people that just sort of subconsciously assume that if you seem like super self-confident, that, you know, and super important, that means that you're smart. And if you're just kind of really approachable, well, you must be just a regular person, until everyone sort of learned the field from my book, in which case, as soon as they would hear my name, they would then take me seriously. How can we make the internet be more sustainable? Well, that's interesting. Do you mean like using less energy? Well, one thing, get rid of blockchain, get rid of cryptocurrency. People get all excited about it. I see all of these articles about how it's the biggest invention since whatever. And one of the things I've been doing is debunking that. It doesn't have the properties that people think that it has, and it's absurdly expensive in terms of compute. Bitcoin alone, which is just a very low volume, mostly researchy thing, it's estimated that it's using about 2 nuclear power plants in order to sustain it. So I tell people who are all excited about, look what I can build on blockchain. I say, no, 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 start with what problem are you solving? And then look at various ways of solving it. And if blockchain is the best way of doing it, well, then fine. But I really haven't seen problems that couldn't be better, much more efficiently solved some other way. But other than that, I'm not sure that the internet is really using a lot more power than it should be. How can we pass the security culture to our children? Well, on the one hand, my daughter just posts volumes of information every day on the internet, and I sort of worry that she's oversharing. But on the other hand, I really appreciate it because I can really, you know, find out everything that's going on with her. But yeah, I'm not sure that refraining from posting is going to help when your search engine is going to remember all the searches that you've ever done and all the videos you've ever watched and keep this enormous database and then sell it. You know, this is just really kind of terrifying. So I don't have a good answer to that, but that's good because, again, you guys are students. So, you know, you really ought to have some good problems to solve. That's why we haven't solved it, because we just want to give you guys something to work on. So I think I might have run out of time. So thank you all.